Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, depending on where you're listening from. My name is Joseph STETTER, and I'm your host. I'm the Resume Whisperer in Corporate Cultures. I've spent a lot of time talking about how to have transferable skills, how to stand out. And today's episode is no different. I'm very excited to have Jason Thomas as our guest, who is a retired Navy veteran who has taken his career in kind of militaria and used that to develop leadership skills and become a founder of Executive Leadership International, founder of Synergy Solutions International, and several other businesses where he shares his ideas and strategies about what leadership is and how to define it. And I want you to understand that, again, part of this conversation is that you understand that there's always a trend of similarities. There's things that need to happen so that you stand out and you move forward in life. So let's welcome Jason to the show. Excellent, Jason.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for for being here. So let's start with kind of the Navy. So what are some of the foundational skills that you would say you learned being in the Navy and serving kind of things?
Absolutely. So I was very fortunate to be accepted into what is the world's most academically challenging military program. And I stress academically because not Navy SEAL. But with 2 years plus of training in nuclear propulsion and reactor operation, you get the foundations of watchstanding. What I learned across my 15 years in the service particularly were the key fundamental foundations of leadership, which is transferable and needed across every sector that there is. I was very happy as I grew in my leadership roles in the civilian sector, and I did some additional studying of my own from some well-known Navy SEALs through Echelon Front, and to find out that our training and actions around integrity, around leadership, are very much in line with one another. And I will apologize greatly for how sunny it is for once. Not normally been our problem here in Ohio. So, but it all starts with the same basic foundation, and that's integrity. It is number one, and in both programs, in the Naval Nuclear Power Program, it is the absolute. We are the only nation that has our nuclear-powered submarines and carriers allowed to pull into foreign ports. And that's because of a perfect safety record that we maintain ourselves. So,
Jason, did you want to maybe close the blinds a little bit behind you because you're kind of...
If I had blinds behind me, I would.
Okay, so maybe, or maybe change the angle a little bit. Sorry. So, but because, always seeing right now, is maybe the other way, because right now you made it a little bit more sunny. I apologize. But that's the world of technology.
Yes, it is.
I think you're being a little bit humble, and I want to kind of give you quotas because I did a little bit of homework, and I know that you were one of 10 nuclear engineers that was asked to build the Navy's new propulsion. That's perfect. that was asked to build the new propulsion system for the Navy. Can you talk about kind of what you did to stand out as a Navy kind of operator and nuclear engineer so that you get selected for that? And again, how did that translate for you to go into the corporate world afterwards? Because I want...
Absolutely. And I want to make sure you're very clear here too, is that I was part of a select team of service members to work with the design engineers on some restructuring, redesign of some critical systems in the propulsion plant, reactor plant, as well as overhauling our operational and casualty procedures. So the new technologies were optimized for combat conditions. So I don't want to take out of context that I like designed reactor sets. That's not what I did, and I'm glad for that. But really, it was a lot of work, and really it is raising others. That's what I loved about leadership in the Navy and with the other branches, as we may drive with one another. At our very core, we are instilled to train our junior sailors to do better than ourselves. And in order to do that, we have to become experts at what we do. And I had a very unique opportunity. My first ship was the last Nimitz-class carrier. I missed being a plank owner, so I missed commissioning by just a couple months, and did every part of her work up through her main deployment, and then was one of the initial manning on the Gerald R4, which is the new Ford-class carrier. And there, throughout the years of testing and working with the design engineers, it was not only building up the junior sailors who had never been out to sea before on this new equipment, but fully driving this new equipment and sticking to our guns and bringing up issues and then not allowing them to stand. One thing in the Naval Nuclear Power Program that's stressed is that the most junior qualified operator isn't merely empowered, but is expected that if there's a question on an order, something they believe is incorrect or they do not understand, they are expected to stop that order, regardless of how high in the chain of command they are inside the propulsion plant, because the procedural compliance and the integrity of that is what's more important than anything else. And my expertise in my selection there, in large part, was due to the fact that I ended up designing what was used to certify our reactor plant individuals prior to initial criticality down in downtown Newport News for our drill team casualty simulations. Thankfully, they have much better programs and full simulator sets now available. But at the time when we were in what we called the Plywood Palace as the ship was being built, we did not have those available. So had to get creative and be able to provide the right type of simulation controls.
Well, and I love what you said there. And I think that this is something I want to draw on because I've been a guest in a few podcasts where the theme is to help people that are veterans get back into the workforce. And as much as, one thing that all branches of military teach you is, follow orders and kind of do what needs to be done. I love that you said, even the lowest level can kind of go speak up and go, this doesn't make sense, or this doesn't work, or this doesn't there, which I think from at least speaking to on other podcasts and so forth, and just kind of seeing people that get promoted in militaria do a little bit more, make decisions, there. And there's a level of, if you've done drawing, if you've done calculations, that ability to make those calculations can be used anywhere in pretty much any industry and is transferable. And I think this is where a lot of militaria forget that or don't understand that if you're doing calculations, that is something that can be applied to data science, like something that could be done in coding, that could be something that applies in being an analyst. That is something that could be applied in strategic decisions, because you can calculate costs, you can calculate risk, you can calculate situations, right? So you had an amazing 15-year career in the Navy, and then you transitioned out. So tell us a little bit about kind of first experiences out of military into kind of the workforce, and what are the things that were the same, what were some of the things that were different, and what did you do to make things better?
Absolutely. And I'm going to touch on the fact, specifically when you're talking about transitioning veterans as the sun continues to move. Because I was just fortunate to get back on Monday from having the opportunity to speak at a veteran mental health symposium that was keynoted by the Secretary of the VA himself. And one of the main topics that he spoke about, and I spoke about particularly myself, was the inadequacy of preparation that the DoD has for transition. There's a week-long TGPS course. It's gone by many names, but at the end of the day, it's while provides some information, is inadequate for an effective transition. I was very, very fortunate in my transition coming on to GE Aviation here in the Dayton area, where my wife and I, our family, was from, is that I started looking 9 months early, which is not normally a time. Thankfully for me, the position was written that was effectively unfillable. Because of all the asks that they had in it, that it remained open by the time I got out of active duty. And coming in and doing the interview and being completely transparent, I thought I was ready to go. Initially, I wanted to do engineering first prior to actually going into the management sector. And there was a stark learning curve for the fact that at GE Aviation, I expected to have the same level of drawings and detail that I was accustomed to in the Navy, because that's where I learned quickly was the expertise of my troubleshooting skills, particularly, was the ability to translate symptoms into activities in the schematics. When I didn't have those schematics, I found myself in what could have been a very big world trouble. But thankfully, I had great intakes from Wes Jones and Joshua Doolin, who really made sure that I had an effective transition. It took the time, and thankfully, there was quickly an opening to manage the test and certifications department there, overseeing all the certification of all new equipment built at the site, all flight critical equipment, FAA equipment. Most of it was DoD. So I was very grateful for having that. I've seen and witnessed firsthand in my other roles individuals who came out completely unprepared and were not able to translate their skills effectively because they never had someone take the time. I was fortunate to have people to look up to when I was at GE, and it was critical for my transition.
I want to talk about two things that you raised, and then we'll transition into your thoughts on leadership and so forth. So first of all, you said that there's like a week-long program to transition military into the corporate world. And you said you don't think it's enough. So what do you think, first of all, would be enough? It's okay. And now the light makes you look more angelic. It's right. But what do you think would be enough? Like, is it 3 months of kind of prepping? Because I think that there's a level where, and from my experiences, a corporate culturist and a resume whisperer, most government agencies that prepare you for a job kind of regurgitate cookie cutter information that's been used for the past 70 years. And, that information was supposed to prepare you for the Industrial Revolution or even 100 years. But we're now in the technological revolution. We're in the AI, explosion. And so a lot of them are not connecting because the resumes are too generic. They're too they look exactly the same. They have the exact same information. And there's this mindset that when I get to the interview, I'll be able to share some of like what you said about your experience with GM, where you didn't have the drawings, but you had great mentors to help you, right? And to also speak, so not only that, but also talk about what can, for example, military do to create a better mentoring program in kind of exiting veterans. Uh, and then we'll go into your own thoughts and leadership, please.
Absolutely. So I will say there are a couple unique programs that actually do a little bit better, but they are longer programs, and you have to have quite a bit of particular command approval to be able to get into those while you're in the service. The current TGPS, or current as of my transition, was effectively 5 days, most of them half days, where you were taught how to write a resume, introduce yourself in an interview, as well as introduced to some of the sites as far as applying for federal jobs, and a very brief overview of your benefits as far as the VA goes. I will say that the resume prep was I wrote what I thought was an outstanding resume. Content-wise, I found out it was fine, and I thought it looked very good. Luckily, there were a number of agencies. My personal case, Lucas Group, is one that works with nukes, particularly when they're getting out of the service, just because of their high sought-after qualifications. That didn't change a word, but the resume that I had and the resume he returned to me were 1,000 years apart. And I've been forever grateful for that, because that's made a huge difference, because the resume is what gets you looked at first. Being someone who's moved into the roles where I'm reviewing the resumes and doing the interviews, or overseeing those who do. My original resume would have not gotten me in the door very often. So very thankful for that. And as far as what I think improvements truly can be made is, honestly, I think an additional week that is brought in by veterans, particularly veteran groups, and the VAs particularly, so they know what benefits are truly there, what things to look for, what things not to look for. The veteran population, there's the 22 a day saying, as far as 22 veterans a day commit suicide. That number fluctuates and has been as high as 27 in recent years. And that's because we're ill prepared for connecting. And I think that is what's really needed, is a direct connect between the DoD and the VA for an additional week in preparation. I mean, just the idea of what civilian healthcare is mind-boggling for those who have only known TRICARE, especially for those who are doing 4 years, 6 years, coming out at a relatively low rank. Less and less their skills are transferable directly into service, into the civilian sector based on where they were at that time, and it can leave them in a very tight position. And we have to do better, just plain and simple. And it's an administrative roadblock, nothing more. So, and I definitely think we have the capability as a veteran community to be able to make that impact. It just requires a new active effort, which we're not accustomed to. Because when you're in the service and you're in your switchgear or your unit, that support and that connection is there whether you want it or not. And even though when you transition to civilian and become a veteran, you actually have access to the active duty and a much larger veteran community, the difference is you're not in it every moment. It takes now an active effort to get into there. So,
Jason, quickly, do you have music in the background? If we can turn that off or whatever, there seems to be music somewhere, so I don't know where it's coming from. So, anyways,
not on my side.
Okay, maybe something right. Okay, maybe I added that in there accidentally. I don't know. Okay, I'll just kind of close this and see if that does it. Okay, I apologize. Maybe it was me. Okay, so now you've kind of had a kind of career. You understood the military transition, and thank you for your insights on that. And again, I want to emphasize to all military veterans, you have a ton of transferable skills that is so needed in the workforce right now. And especially since there's a level of structure and order in military that needs to be applied in the corporate world in a better scale. So now you kind of are, in a leadership, and you love talking about leadership and kind of what corporations need to do to have better leadership. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts of leadership and how do you approach kind of training companies or others on leadership as a whole?
Absolutely. So you can easily go back pretty much to the Industrial Revolution, and you can find articles about every generation of executives and leaders questioning why the current generation doesn't want to work. You hear that a lot in today's society, and as well as entitlement of the current generations. And one of the things that I do, not to spoil too much, coming into my speech in New York next week, but the last generation and generations before have had pensions. And that has a lot to do with the ease of corporations being able to maintain that corporate loyalty. And a lot of people don't give credence to the fact that entitlements normally have requirements. And that's exactly what pensions were. It was you provided your work energy within the single company, and you were then entitled to a pension. So we're not going back to pensions unless you're in a government sector job. So how do we fix this? More and more I saw, even at GE and when I ran a manufacturing plant, pre and post COVID, when you had hybrid meetings, no one had their cameras on, number one. It became more and more disconnected where individuals were more and more just a single, is it a number? Is that unavoidable? And of course, I believe that that's not.
Sorry. Interestingly enough, 58% of people that work from home actually miss the water cooler conversations and miss the kind of connection. And so, this is a conversation I have a lot with my clients as a corporate culturist to kind of go, here's how you can engage your employees back, like having, let's say, a trivia night where everybody zooms in, but because they're trivia and it's not just work, there's that element of competition. There's that element of togetherness because you're kind of competing against your coworkers and so forth. So I love that. And we had a comment on LinkedIn from one of our listeners that wanted to know, is there a difference between being injured on the job or on duty and being discharged than kind of a regular discharge? And then are there any additional services provided in that case to help people transition?
So there are a number of different cases. There are medical retirements, medical discharges. I did not have that. If I would have signed another contract, I likely would have. However, when you come out with the VA, which is retroactive, it starts with your service-connected disabilities and the capture that there was some sort of injury or condition that was caused by your time in the service. And I find it hard pressed that anyone in the service doesn't have some level of degradation. And I can't stress enough how important it is for service members to go and get evaluated. Because even if they end up as with a 0% rating, right, it does a number of things. One, it actually does provide benefits as far as it removes the funding fee on the VA home loan application. But more importantly, is that if that condition worsens, your ability for treatment through the VA is guaranteed to that condition and any secondary or worsening conditions that come from it. So there are some great organizations, nonprofits, Disabled American Veterans, DAV, which is one that I have used and am currently in the process of using again, that are certified by the VA as legal advocates and are able to expeditiously navigate the paperwork. As in any large corporation, and the government is the largest of bureaucracies, there's plenty of paperwork that must be done. And for all my VA claims and conditions, I have never filled out a piece of VA paperwork. The DAV has been able to do that. So thankfully, there are a number of wonderful nonprofits that are able to help do that. So there are a number of different ways that medical ties into it. But my thing for service members is get it documented on active duty without question, and then immediately follow up with a VA advocate.
Thank you for those insights, Jason. Obviously, the short of it is be resourceful and ask questions and find out what your rights are. And if you're not getting any answers, ask more questions, call back, ask somebody else. So like, I can't tell you the number of times that I've called, let's say, customer service rep, they have no idea what I'm talking about. I disconnect, I call back, and I get somebody that actually does know what they're talking about. So, and I think that will kind of circle back to, and tell us a little bit about your businesses in terms of Synergy Solutions and Executive Leadership International, and kind of when you come in and a company hires you, what do you talk about? How do you strategize with them? How do you help them implement systems to kind of be better leaders and better understand it using your experiences from Militaria, your experience from GE, and throughout your career as you've progressed, please?
Well, it all comes from culture, which comes from leadership. And it really comes down to it first, really getting them to understand the fundamentals of leadership, what leadership really is, as well as the foundational steps. First and foremost, leadership has nothing to do with the person, position, or title. You can have bosses. That doesn't make them leaders. You can have frontline individuals who are leaders. Right? Acts of leadership, as I define across the millennia of those who have defined the term, acts of leadership are when you empower someone else to recognize a potential that they didn't realize they already had. Right? It's never about you. It's about raising those around you, right? Raising their capabilities, right? Leaders are those that their acts of leadership actually manifest acts of leadership in others. Leaders creating leaders, which is standard in the service. And that's the most important part to understand as far as what a leader is. And then there's the structure on how empowered leadership has to be built. And it starts, one, with integrity. First and foremost, it is the most critical. It is your say-do ratio. It is the hardest to build. It is the easiest to break. I often refer to it as basically a glass plate on a pin, right? That's holding up the rest of foundation for your leadership. So integrity first and foremost. And then we go into understanding that you own everything, right? Big part of extreme ownership. As a leader, you're responsible for everything. When I was as a plant manager, I came in the morning, had a call that there was an issue overnight where someone had left their station and wrapped a roll and caused a big mess. So we were doing the fact finding after that, and I came in and listened, and I asked, all right, well, whose fault is this? And the operator stood up and said, well, it's my fault. I left. I didn't turn over effectively. It's definitely my fault. I said, well, no, whose fault is this? Well, the senior operator stands up, well, I knew he was leaving. I should have gone over and double checked. And then the supervisor said, well, it's my shift. I should have done. Right? And then I told him it's my fault. At the end of the day, as a leader, I failed to properly prepare them and give them the tools necessary to be effective. And one of the big pieces that there's confusion around empowered leadership is that somehow by having extreme ownership that removes accountability from those you oversee. And it's just not the case, because if I have answered that I haven't properly been able to communicate, I have provided the effective tools, and an individual continues to fail to perform, it is my fault for allowing that individual to remain and detract from the team. So it all comes back to me, right? But that doesn't mean that we don't hold accountability to those, but we have to, as leaders, ensure that we have first done our jobs, right, to provide the tools, the training, and the effective communication necessary for them to do their jobs. Then we can hold them accountable. So that's a start.
Listen, I love that. One of my favorite books of all time is called The Radical Leap by Steve Farber. And in that book, it's kind of a 100-page book. The summary of the book is there's a guy that's kind of been by the book, loses his job, and he's trying to kind of figure out what to do next and how. And he meets this beach bum. And the beach bum tells him, leadership is the acronym LEAP. Love, energy, audacity, and proof. If you cultivate love, you will generate energy. You will inspire audacity, and the proof will be in the pudding. And then kind of the continuation is, he goes, the difference between a leader and a radical leader is OS exclamation M, better known as oh shit moments, right? And so I think that there's a tie-in where, you hit on this so brilliantly, is that, a lot of times, let's say engineers, for example, are very brilliant technically, but they lack the communication skill. But because they have seniority, or because they've been very good at what they do, they become the leader. But they don't, they feel that becoming a leader is actually punishment, because they're not fully ready, or they're not understanding the dynamic changes from being very technical to now, let's say, delegating work, to communicating what the strategy is, to communicating the ideas. And so, I talk about this all the time, that as a corporate culturist, there's a difference between saying something and actually following through. And if your employees don't see you following through on it, this creates a massive, massive gap of, I'm going to do enough not to get fired, but I'm not really buying into, even if it's rah-rah. We have about 4 minutes left in the interview. I'd like you to kind of share about, how people can get a hold of you, what kind of, time frames you offer in terms of helping companies understand leadership and communication with that. And, where and what you focus on, so that our listeners can kind of benefit from your genius and your approach to leadership as a whole.
Absolutely. So I believe we have up within the chat digital business card you can get at linkapp.com/SSI-CEO for Synergy Solutions International CEO, as well as just taking a look at the website executiveleadershipinternational.com. Do not be afraid that those are only offerings, because they are not. Actually, 99% of our offerings, whether it's in this wing of our company portfolio or our AI learning, international bidding portfolio, we ensure our value is in line with what the customer needs. So we do as small as one-on-one coaching to individual training seminars to developing complete certification and training courses. When it comes to leadership, I am exceptionally passionate and will guarantee that as long as the leaders within an organization are invested in actually seeing that their training and as an asset and not as a cost center, and be prepared to actually see an active reduction in turnover, increase in morale, increase in productivity, then invest in empowered leadership. Because you brought up one of the great points is that people get put into leadership roles because they've been there the longest. Very seldom do you have leaders who are groomed prior to entering that position. Some companies may provide leadership training once they're in the role, if you're lucky. Outside of the service, that's maybe the best you can hope for. And that's the dichotomy that is so startling to me, even in big companies, is that the military does this intrinsically. Right? We train our replacements, and we train them to be better than us. That is what our job is. And so by the time they're ready to take that next role, or they're moving into that role, they're well ready for it. They're well prepared. And we have to be able to emulate that in the civilian sector. We have to have enough forethought to be able to provide that so we can have effective leadership and effective transition for teams.
I 100% agree with you. We got about a minute left. I just want to kind of do the closing thoughts. But here's an interesting thing. One of the biggest retailers in the world, Costco, right? 70% of their back office started being like pushing carts or being cashiers at Costco. When Costco promotes an individual, even at the store level, they give a month and a half of training so that you're not just dealing with the surface, you're actually dealing with those real, here's the complex, potentially day-to-day stuff that you're going to deal with, so that whoever takes over is comfortable. And as a retailer, not only do they really take care of their employees, but they have one of the best retention rates of the world of retail that exists.
And that doesn't surprise me at all from that statement. So
right. So, and I wanted to tie it down because I think you're right, and this is also to our veterans out there. We need your insights as to how to groom the next generation. We need, like, if you look at some of these speakers that have been around for forever, like Tony Robbins and things like that. God forbid Tony Robbins passes away. Who's going to take over that genius that he's accumulated over time? And this is something that military does really well, that I think most veterans don't know how to communicate when it comes to being in the workforce, that they understand how to build the next generation of leadership. And I thank you very much for your insights. And again, I want you to understand there isn't a right way to be a leader. There's, as Jason said, be in integrity, do the actions, be the person, and have the leadership skills, right? As opposed to when this happens, right? But if you want to get ahead in life, whether it's as an employee, whether it's an entrepreneur, you need to do more than others. You need to offer value. You need to show that you're not just talking it, you're doing it. You're showing up consistently. And with that, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you for those that post questions online and continue to post questions and get engaged with us. As always, my name is Joseph Stetter. I am the Resume Whisperer and Corporate Culturist. And don't hesitate to contact me. My websites are around my head because I'm here to serve. I'm here to help you as an individual grow, or companies hire the right fit people and keep them. And I surround myself with leaders like Jason that can come in and have certain conversations that are a different flavor than mine, so that my clients get value from having things said in different ways so that they can get things done faster and better. And with that, I thank you, and I hope you have a beautiful evening, a beautiful morning, or a great afternoon. Thank you.